Welcome to the Psychology World podcast. I'm Connor Whiteley, bringing you psychology news, articles, and other interesting psychology-related articles. Where I can find the podcast notes and more interesting psychology-related things, and you can get your free 8 psychology book box set at connorwhiteley.net. Now let's get on to the show. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 66 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, and today is Friday the 18th of December 2020 as I record this, and today's episode is on tips on how couples can overcome arguments using social psychology. So this episode I really like, and the reason why I'm doing this sort of like real life applicable episode is because sometimes I feel like psychology can be a bit abstract. Sometimes I don't think psychology can always relate to our real life, which is what I like to do these relationship episodes every so often, just so we know that psychology has a real world impact and we can use it in our lives. So hopefully you're going to really enjoy today's episode. But moving on to the psychology news section. So we're in from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. So the first one is: Liberal Americans' distress at the 2016 election result shouldn't be labelled depression, study argues. Anyone who's been invested in an election result will understand the close relationship between politics and emotions. Well, I've definitely felt that, especially with the 2019 UK election, the Brexit referendum. It was an interesting time, so something that is perhaps even more affecting when that result is disappointing. After the 2016 presidential election, for example, articles appeared in the US press describing a national nervous breakdown and offering tips to deal with the so-called political depression, and empirical studies indicated that the same event has caused psychological distress. It will be hard to deny that politics have a serious impact on our mood, but is it correct to call that depression? A new paper finds that while liberal Americans reported a Trump depression post-election, their empirical data suggests that this isn't an enduring or even clinically significant experience, and although using clinical terms unnecessarily may seem validating, it can serve to diminish both experiences of those living with this says illnesses, but I'm going to change that to say serious mental conditions, and the range of normal emotions that we experience across our political, social, and personal lives. Now, this article I completely agree with. Like when I was reading it, I was thinking, right, I'm definitely going to comment on that, because this is the quite annoying thing though. We're like, yes, I don't suffer with depression, but I know people who have. And here the media and people were just saying that, depression, yes, and just people using depression in this incorrect way is actually really annoying, because to be honest, it is the most, because it's sort of invalidating the very serious difficulties that people suffering from depression face, though, because you're sort of toning it down to some extent. So I think that the takeaway from this news article is just, if you ever see something that isn't quite correct, like calling something depression when it actually isn't, or it's not as serious as depression, then I would just say that challenge it and just, I don't know, really. I think this is all a awareness thing. So the last one is: people take better care of public parks if they feel a greater sense of ownership over them. And this, I think, is a really important, considering that in the lockdown, throughout 2020, we've been using public spaces a lot more, especially in the busy cities. So this is really important, and especially as we're going to need more public spaces to do something about climate change, probably. The tragedy of the commons was popularised in the 1960s as a way of explaining how public or shared resources which were incentivised to use can become depleted or ruined by individual self-interest, and because we have shared ownership of public resources, we feel less responsible for them, and therefore less of an impotence to contribute time, energy or money to keep them going. As we become more aware and concerned about threats to the environment, the tragedy of the commons seems ever more pestilent. How do we keep parks, rivers, lakes and other local resources well maintained? According to a new study published in the Journal of Marketing, it might come down to a sense of ownership. The more we feel a property or resource is ours, the better we can take care of it. So this, I think, is really important, because at the end of the day, if the local parks and all the local resources which we take for granted and the stuff that we love, as a child, I used to love going down to the like going down to the local park and everything. Yeah, so like if we want them to survive for future generations and for our children, our great-grandchildren, our family to enjoy now and in the future, then we need to preserve them. So I think that local councils or whatever your local regional governments they need to think about how can we make like the local people feel like they have a shared ownership of it, just so they have more of an input and just so they care about preserving this natural environment. So it's just it's just like something to think about and something that's really interesting for the future. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's psychology news section. Let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. So this is Christmas week. So wherever you are in the world, whenever you celebrate, I really hope that you have a great Christmas present day. I think that's the Jehovah Witness one, or basically like, whatever you celebrate, I really hope that you have a wonderful time and a happy new year. So it's usually around like this time of year where like, I'm trying to get like the last few projects done before like Christmas and like the New Year. So like I've got like this week I've finished like 10 to like pre-orders for the next 3 Garrow books, and there's a standalone fiction book. I absolutely loved like getting them out and like writing them. Yes, they're going to be released on March the 1st. Because I'm really like looking forward to it. And this week has also been quite busy with like university because I've had 3 exams. One was on biological psychology, one was on statistics, and then the other one was on computing. That one was a funny one. Because I sort of had no idea that SPS had so many functions until this week. Again, like the university gave us a bit of extra like revision like at the last minute. So I thought that was like really like interesting. Yes, but thankfully I'm done with university for the month now, which I'm really glad. Meaning that I can do tons of like creative projects, but I can have a bit of downtime. Like for example, like tomorrow, 2 days before you listen to this on like Monday, I'm actually going to be like recording the next 3 episodes in advance because of how like Christmas falls and everything. Things are going to be a bit like pre-recorded, but on next week's episode I should be doing that British Psychological Society quotes that I wanted to mention a few weeks ago, as the new section. So you will still have a new section. But I've also been typing up tons of notes, which I actually quite enjoy typing up notes. Which, yes, I know that feels really, really strange though, because as I type up notes, I can see what I've learned, and the creative part of my brain can start to think oh, which book can that go in? What should I research more, just so I have more information on that? And it's just stuff like that. So I'm really enjoying that. I've got about 4 or 5 more batches of notes, which is what I'm doing this in. The morning, because I'm waiting for a few parcels today. Exciting life. Yes, I'll be typing up some more stuff with that. And then next week I've got 2 short stories that I want to submit, but I have to write them first. Yes, this was a very quick personal update. And as always, I always love to know your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, conwhiteley@conwhiteley.net. You can always tweet me on Twitter @SciFiWhiteley, and you can leave a comment at the show notes at conwhiteley.net. And today's episode has been sponsored by my psychology journal / notebooks. Notebooks, because it's getting towards the end of the year. You might want a last minute present, and you also might want to start buying your stationery here for the new year, lots of my author friends have already started doing. Yes, in my psychology notebooks and journals, they're great because they have a really attractive cover, and then they have tons of pages where you can write down your notes for the new year. If you're a student, then they're great for making lecture notes. If you're a psychologist, then they're great for making them client notes. And they're also a bit of a talking point in case you need to break the ice. So I really, really enjoy these journals. So you can find them at conwhiteley.net/books, or if you go on Amazon, then you can just type in Psychology Journal Conor Whiteley, and then they should all come up. So that's enough for the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So we're moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to look at how couples can stop arguments using social psychology. And as always, none of this is professional, legal, relationship advice. And this is just a blog post and a podcast episode to give you a few ideas. Please don't take this as any sort of official advice. So moving on to today's episode. So we all know that couples argue. That's completely normal. And to some extent, I think that's actually quite healthy, because I truly, truly believe that through conflict, things that can grow as a people. Like, I know that in like friendships, like after an argument, like the friendship has got a bit better and it's like got a bit closer. And then if we look at the more drastic and the more horrific example, it was only through World War II that we got the great technologies that we know today. Sadly, at a quite horrific cost. For example, like we wouldn't have like wireless technology without World War II. Like, we wouldn't have the great organisations that we have today. For example, like the European Union, NATO, and the UN. Wow, that was a hell of a tangent there. But when couples argue constantly, that can be a really bad thing, and it can have a lot of other side effects, like to do with like mental health, the stress in the relationship, and tons of other undesirable outcomes. So, in case this ever happens to you, then I want to give you a few social psychology ideas. Okay, so the first one is the interest behind the position, not to the interest itself. So the example we're going to be using throughout this podcast episode, that you and your partner, whether it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, etc., you are fighting about where you want to go on a holiday. Because I know, 2020, not been able to go on a holiday, so to be honest, I really, really want to make the most of 2021 in terms of like travel, seeing the UK, seeing the world, and everything. Because I just want to, get out again, and chances are you feel the same. So that's the example that we're going to go with. And the example is that you're going to want to go to the Caribbean. I've been to the Caribbean. I hate it because, yes, it's really relaxing, but I'm not the sort of like relaxing person. I like to be doing stuff. I like to be seeing stuff. And then there's also Paris, which I think is like great. Except the metro system. The metro system is lethal in France. Again, just a personal opinion. Oh God, I've got some funny stories about the French metro. But the interest behind the position. So if you can't actually come to an agreement because of the destination, a great idea is to know why you want to go there. Because for the person who wants to go to the Caribbean, the only reason why they might actually want to go to the Caribbean is because it's sunny. Okay, and then the person why they want to go to France, that might be because they're interested in history and the architecture. Now, because you know the reasons now and the interest, you can become a lot more flexible, because all that you actually need to satisfy both of you is that you need to go somewhere sunny with history and architecture. Now, I can think of like quite a few places, and if you really wanted to, then you could probably say like the Caribbean does have some architecture and quite a lot of history because of the slave trade, pirates, and everything. So that's just something that I think about. So if you can't get over a argument, and if you can't stop it, then try and ask yourself why so firm behind this position. Then ask your partner, perhaps. So another one is take turns. Take turns. This one is really simple, because at the end you both get what you want. For example, you might want to go to the Caribbean this year, and then you might go to Paris next year. Yes, so that was a really short tip, but in my own opinion, I think that one tends to be quite effective. So another one is a quid pro quo, and I absolutely love it, and I absolutely love the original article that I've linked to in the show notes. Today, because basically we all know that in relationships, whether it's friendships or couples, there are things that you love but your partner hates, and vice versa. And a quid pro quo is really, really simple, because basically they do something that you want to do, then you do something that they want to do. For example, if your partner loves cars, but you hate them, but if they agree to go to the Caribbean with you, then you go to a car show with them. God, even saying it, I would hate that. But I think I would rather go to a car show than the Caribbean. At least a car show is only a few days. So the final tip is flip a coin. While if you still can't make a decision after all that, then you must probably best just flipping a coin, just hoping it. Because yes, it might not actually give you a decision, but at the end of the day, it will save you weeks of arguments, and it might actually save the relationship. Because if you read Psychology of Human Relationships, 2nd edition, I think I go into the conversation about stress that can be really bad in relationships, and it also goes into Rowley Duck's, I forget the year, the model of relationship breakdown. And if you can stop the arguments, stop the stress, stop the negativity in the relationship, 4 stages, 4 to 6, then your relationship does have a good thing. does have a good chance of staying together. So hopefully you've got something out of today's episode. As always, I always love to know your feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, tweet me, or leave a comment on the show notes at connorwhiteley.net. Please check out my psychology journals, connorwhiteley.net/books. So have a great day, everyone. Happy Christmas, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the show notes, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. And if you want a free 8-book psychology box set, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.